Welcome to Living Well with MS. This show comes to you from Overcoming MS, the world's leading multiple sclerosis healthy lifestyle charity, which helps people live a full and healthy life through the Overcoming MS program. We interview a range of experts and people with multiple sclerosis. Please remember, all opinions expressed are their own. Receive monthly tips and ideas about living well with MS by signing up for our newsletter at overcomingms.org/newsletter. And now, let's meet our guest.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Overcoming MS podcast, Living Well with MS. Joining me on this edition is Jane Airey-Regardsoe, who is a joint member of the Southwest Circle in the UK, which I'm also a member of, and she's also joined by her husband Ian. And what they're going to talk about today is a charity challenge they're doing, and I've forgotten its name already. I know you just told me, but so you can introduce it, Jane. What's the name of your charity challenge?
It's the OMS Door-to-Door Challenge.
Door-to-Door Challenge, that's it. So they're doing the OMS Door-to-Door Challenge, or Ian is, and so we'll discuss more about that as we go on. So firstly, Jane, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your MS journey and your overcoming MS journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. So I obviously I live in mid Devon. I was diagnosed with my MS in 2020, but actually my diagnosis journey was much longer than that, as it is for a lot of people. I ended up getting the diagnosis because I had hearing problems. I've got tinnitus, but only in one ear, and that naturally leads you to have an MRI scan. So I had my MRI scan, that went back to my GP, and it sort of said something really weird in the letter, like there's sort of some patches, showing on the brain scan. It's probably related to age. It was really badly written. It was very vague. And I sort of said to my doctor, I'm really not very happy about that. I've got something going on. I'd like to know a bit more about it. And your immediate sort of thought really is, dementia, early onset dementia. I'm going to be 60 this year. So, it's not that unrealistic to sort of think when you've got something showing on an MRI scan that might be something to worry about. Anyway, and alongside that, I went along to my optician, and they were really unhappy with my my range of field test. So did that a couple of times, said, still not happy. I'm going to send you to the eye clinic. So went along there and had a massive shock to be told that they believed I had had a mini stroke. So completely not expecting it. So I said to them, well, can I speak to the stroke team then? And so she made a few phone calls. She said, oh no, I'm sorry, we can't to put you in touch with the stroke team because you're not having a stroke now. It's not acute. So back to the doctor. Anyway, so the doctor then obviously sent me to a neurologist and finally felt that I was on the right path. Started to have the tests. As soon as the doctor saw me, the neurologist saw me, he said, no, you haven't had a stroke. He said, but there is something going on. And so he did an MRI scan and a lumbar puncture. And I got the diagnosis actually during lockdown, and as it was for everybody, a very odd time. So I didn't get to my diagnosis in person or by telephone. I just had it in a letter, which was a huge shock because he had steered me away from MS, and he'd said, don't start looking at MS because there's all sorts of horrible stuff on the internet, and I don't actually think it's that. So that was a real shock for us both, wasn't it? So when I went to sort of back to see the neurologist and we talked about it, we identified that I'd actually had problems with my eyesight in 2012. I call it a blind spot. It's something much more complicated than that, where I actually don't have the vision in one of the bottom quarters of my eye, which is related to my brain. But I could also remember back to back in, I think it was 2002, actually losing the feeling in my fingers, so losing the sensation in my fingers. I used to make ice birthday cakes for my son every year, and I never did one after that because it was too complicated. You know, that fine. So it's funny, isn't it? You get your diagnosis, and it's almost like the pieces of a jigsaw fall into place. So that was sort of what happened for me. And the first thing I did was, obviously, I went on to the big MS charities, read about it, and, you know, you're in a bit of shock. Then I thought, well, I need to reach out to some people. And I actually went on to some of the bigger charities, their forums, and I found them so depressing that I just stopped doing anything. And then take us on a year to 2021, I was chatting to one of my friends, and her husband has Parkinson's, and he had been on the internet and he'd found a chap who was following a healthy way of eating, of living. I thought, yeah, I really do need to pull myself together, see if I can find something that's going to help. So back on the internet, and that's when I came across OMS, went onto the website, started listening to one of the podcasts, which was you, Jeff. I think you were talking to George Jelinek back then, and I thought, this sounds really good. So got the book, the big thick book, and pretty much demolished it. Really, read it really quickly, then gave it to you to read, didn't I, Ian? And that was it. You know, since that time, that was the big change for me.
So Ian, sort of touch on you there, because it's actually, my wife hasn't read the whole book. Well, I'd quite like her to, but I know it is a big book, isn't it? So there's some much shorter ones like the handbook, which is easier, and so yes, read that. So Ian, as a partner with someone who's got MS and who's following the Overcoming MS journey, firstly, how did it change your life, and what do you do now to support Jane with her Overcoming MS journey?
Obviously, is a major shock for both of us, because we hadn't been led to believe that it was MS. It made us immediately sort of look at our lifestyle, what we're doing. COVID was obviously right in the middle of the COVID. It was quite difficult period of time anyway. But at the end of it, we found the OMS program, and I did read the book and the handbook as well. And I think supporting Jane with the program, I think there's lots of different aspects of it. You know, it's trying to lead as normal life as possible. Being a husband, not a carer. Jane doesn't need a carer, doesn't want a carer, but being there, you know, to help and support when there's a bad day or when the fatigue comes in. I try and keep her informed and up to date on the OMS program. I do miss some of the podcasts. That's probably the bit I'm not that good at. So I do try to. And also to encourage her to, you know, to take part and to develop parts of the program she finds a little bit more difficult. But generally, it's just.
And do you implement some of it as well? Have you changed something?
We do. We both enjoy cooking. So certainly the diet side, we cook together. We eat exactly the same diet. You know, so it's very rare that I eat meat. I exercise quite a lot. I'm not so hot on the meditation. But generally, you know,
you're putting yourself down there actually, because you know you completely follow the food plan at home. Yeah. Different if perhaps we go out for a meal or we're going around to friends, but you know you just stopped eating meat at home. stopped eating cheese, which you absolutely love. And, you know, it makes it a heck of a lot easier for me when Ian's following it as well, not having to think about 2 different types of food, not having things in the cupboards that are a real temptation. So, yeah, I think, you know, I think you did.
And I think it's the more we learn, the more we find that it's actually just a healthy way of life. Yeah. It's not just an MS thing. It's a cancer thing. Or Parkinson's, you mentioned. I've got friends with Parkinson's, and they have a very similar sort of encouragement to eat similarly, and mindfulness and exercise and all these things. I mean, there's a few things which are specific, like vitamin D. But again, actually, that's sort of starting to become in the UK. That's now standard advice, isn't it, to supplement vitamin D? So pretty much, we are living a healthy lifestyle by any regards. And yes, it's not going to do anyone any harm. The whole program you mentioned. So you've got the diet, plant-based plus seafood, vitamin D, meditation, exercise. So how long have you been following that, Jane? And did you find it easy to adopt the program?
Well, that's a real mixture. So yeah, I adopted it in 2021. Some parts were definitely easier than others. The diet side, I think, was the easiest. I mean, as Ian was saying, we both enjoy cooking food. We both have an interest in food. So we were already experimenting with some vegan food. We still include the fish side of things in our in our meals. So that was the easiest. The vitamin D, well, I take a vitamin D spray, but actually I get my vitamin D tested, and I've really struggled to get it to the right levels. So I'm now taking a fairly heavy whack of vitamin D every day, and I'm finally getting up to those levels. So whilst it's an easy thing to do, reaching the level that was needed to fit in with the program was actually quite hard. I've got a dog that's crawl on my lap here, so that's why I'm moving about a bit. Yeah, go on then, you have him there. And then the meditation.
Yeah, it's not. So you take vitamin D, and it takes time, doesn't it? Vitamin D. It's like you can't just take it and then tomorrow your levels are up. You've got to check every 6 months or so, because it will take ages to.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. I test it at the in the spring and then in the autumn, and it basically just wasn't really moving. You know, I had to keep increasing the amounts. But then meditation, I found that quite easy. I found it quite easy to do. What I found hard was finding a routine so that I would do it regularly. The hardest bit for me, exercise. You know, really is. I get hot when I exercise, which becomes very uncomfortable, as everybody with MS knows. I hadn't realised that perhaps that was one of the reasons why I didn't like exercise so much. So that's been the hardest thing to incorporate. I do Pilates, and my Pilates teacher is a neurological Pilates teacher. Have one-to-ones with her. And that has been amazing, because balance was a big issue for me. And she's really, you know, I used to trip and I used to fall quite a lot, and that just doesn't happen anymore. So that's amazing. And I also have started doing strength work as well, and more recently doing some swimming, because I was doing the Pilates, but I wasn't doing any sort of aerobic exercise, which is really important. So definitely the exercise is the hardest thing for me to fit in, and the thing that I really have to be pushed to do.
And swimming is good because it keeps you cool as well, doesn't it? It's just you don't get wet swimming. So
yeah, absolutely.
And do you have any tips if someone was new to the program? What tips would you give them about actually starting the program and getting into the program?
Well, I think one of the biggest tips is to sort of know yourself, because, you know, some people try to incorporate the whole thing straight away, and that works really well for them. But for some people, they think that they should be incorporating every aspect of the program straight away. It's a bit like going on a diet. And when they don't do it, when they can't fit it all in, when they can't make all of their changes, they sort of beat themselves up a bit, be really hard on themselves. But actually, if you need to take it slowly, if you need to take it bit by bit, I think just understand that that's fine. You know, it's okay to do that. And I think that if you are the sort of person who needs to take it bit by bit, think about the easiest thing, the easiest pillar, and turn that into a habit. So turn it into something you don't have to think about. You know, I mean, for instance, if it's eating, if it's the food side, one of the things that we do now is we have sort of like we'll have a curry night, and we might have an Italian night, which might be pasta. So on particular days of the week, I know I'm cooking, but I might just be using different ingredients in it each week. Or there will be things that will be in the freezer, you know, like we've got curries in the freezer. All things that just make it easier to do because I don't have to think about it so much. Yeah.
So onto we were talking about diet. Onto the meat of this. Sorry about the pun. So Ian, you're training for this amazing bike ride. So could you tell us a bit about the OMS door-to-door challenge? I'm taking it's not next door.
No, it's 950 miles away between the two doors. So it's something I've always wanted to do. I've always loved the Pyrenees, so I did a lot of mountaineering down there, and some trekking, and I started cycling to get fit for the trekking, and the cycling took over. And it's like we were coming back from France last year, and there was a book that detailed a route down through France from the north coast to the south coast. So I picked it up just to read, and decided pretty much within an hour that I was going to do this cycle. So
the two doors, but both your doors.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've got a place. So you've got a place in the Pyrenees. You've got a place in Devon, in the UK, right? Okay.
A very small village house in the mountains. So it's nothing special, nothing flash, but it's
not a big sheet, is it?
No, it's not a chateau. So that's what where the idea came from. So we're going. And it's as much a challenge for Jane it is for me. The route.
And what's your rough route? Are you going down the middle of France or down the coast?
Roughly, well, the longest day distance-wise is from here to Poole, or places where you cross in. And then it's basically down through the Cherbourg Peninsula, through the Loire, down just west of Limoges, down skirting around Toulouse, and into the Pyrenees. So it's roughly right down the middle. And the aim is it's not a race. It's it's going through parts of France we don't know. So it's much interest in seeing France.
Yes, I'm not sure how much I've seen.
I mean, seeing well, you're kind of seeing the length, aren't you?
Yeah.
You are seeing the length of France, pretty much top to bottom.
Yeah, but
there are a lot of. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say it's 18 cycling days, so it's about 50 miles a day, which isn't, like I said, it's not a race. It's
But it's not flat, though, is it?
No, some of it is. Some of it is. Some of it isn't.
Yeah, but we get to the Pyrenees, and that's pretty hilly, I think.
The last 2 days will be the hardest.
Well, you should be pretty fit by then, I imagine.
Yeah, hopefully.
So there are quite a lot of there's many charities, and there's many MS charities as well. So why have you chosen to raise money for Overcoming MS for your ride?
Yeah, I think for us it was an easy choice because you're quite right, there are a lot of MS charities out there, but Overcoming MS is the charity that's made the biggest difference to our lives, hasn't it?
Yeah.
In that it's the charity that's given us hope of leading the best life that we can, the best life possible. Because as you know, you get an MS diagnosis. It's not a diagnosis for me; it's a diagnosis for the family. So it impacts on me. It impacts on Ian. It impacts on the things that we thought we'd be doing in the future. And the OMS program helps us to think, helps us to believe that we'll still be able to do some of those things that we wanted to do. But not only that, it gives you a roadmap to do it. It gives you the program, and there's so many resources, and there's so much help out there. So you've got the program, you've got the route map, but in some ways the biggest thing is the community. Meeting other people with MS who are like-minded, who want to make a positive difference. You couldn't put a value on that. It's just amazing, I think. So, yeah, it was sort of an obvious choice, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
And how much preparation is this going to take? Are you doing a lot of training now? Is it a lot to prepare?
I am cycling on a regular basis now, sort of just over 40 miles a day, 2-3 times a week, as well as shorter rides. But preparation-wise, as much, if not more, work has actually gone into planning it than the actual physical exercise. The route had to work for both of us. It had to be planned in a way that made it as easy as we could for Jane. I mean, she'll be driving the camper van with the dogs. So there's up to now, it's virtually there now, planning wise. Most of the work has gone into that rather than the actual physical, prep on a bike. But I have stepped it up in the last few months. I'm cycling regular. I'm quite happy with where I am at the moment on that front. So just keep pedaling.
And Jane, so you and the dogs are the support team then in a camper van. So how are you? I mean, is it daunting for you, that the physical side of it and the emotional support side?
Yes,
because you're the person with MS. So you're.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. There's obviously the fatigue, which is, if you like, the obvious one. So many people with MS have fatigue, and you can imagine that doing all the bits, all the support bits, is going to be tiring. But then there's also the stress of the unknown as well. And we know that stress is often a big part with MS, that, if you're having stressful days, you tend to, the symptoms step up a bit, don't they? And it affects your sleep and so on. So, I mean, there are various sort of aspects. So the days are going to be busy. Not only, obviously, send Ian off on his bike, but then I'll be packing up the camper van, making sure the dogs are walked, driving on to the next site, but also via getting any shopping that needs to be done, making sure we stop somewhere so that the dogs can be walked, finding the site, then setting up the camper van, getting any washing done that needs to be done, all that basic stuff that, all has to be fitted in. And so I think part of the challenge there is going to be making sure I still am able to keep up with the program in the way that I want to keep up with it. So doing my meditation every day, doing some of my balance exercises that I do every day, perhaps doing some weights exercises. And I think that a lot of that sort of comes down to planning. The better planned I am, the better routine that we have in the day, then the better that's going to be. When it sort of comes to the stress side of it, I have to say My French is not good at all. You know, I can speak and I can be understood. I can speak in like the current, you know, the present tense, but I can't speak in the past tense or the future tense very well. And as soon as somebody speaks to me in French, it's like my mind goes blank and I just don't understand what they said. So it's sort of a bit of a one-sided conversation that I have. So that is a bit of a worry. So yeah, there's lots of things that I'm concerned about. It is a huge challenge for me. Definitely going to be out of my comfort zone. And one of the things we have made a decision on is that for the sort of the beginning parts of that challenge, we're actually going to bring Ian's cousin with us as well, so that if anything goes wrong, there's somebody on hand to help out. You know, if the van breaks down, no, I don't know how to say. Please, can you tow my camper van with your tractor? I don't know how to say that in French. Or something awful like that. Ian's cousin is actually a fluent French speaker, which is going to take a huge amount of stress off me, because even in spite of that sort of thing, it's still going to be very demanding. I'm definitely going to be out of my comfort zone. But I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of chat to you is that I hope that people who listen to your podcast and listen to me talking about this, you know, I'm in my 60th year, and I stopped work because of my MS. So to be able to, you know, do something that's putting me out of my comfort zone is a huge thing. And I'm sort of saying to people who are my sort of age, you know, if I can do it, you can find something to be brave. Go outside of your comfort zone. You can do it as well. So fingers crossed we're going to get to the end.
I'm sure we will. I mean,
and do you have any tips?
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. The route is planned. There's no more than sort of an hour and a half driving a day for Jane. So the way we planned it is to try and take out some of the stresses, you know, and try and, you know, allow for the fatigue, if you like.
Yeah, the actual driving time isn't that long, is it?
No, because you kind of think, oh, it's the distance, but actually, yeah, if you're driving, that's not a big thing at all. No. But as you say, then you start thinking, actually, when you were saying all of the other things you've got to do, of course, you've got to do all the packing up, you've got to do all the washing up, cleaning, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot to do to do a sport run. Actually, the driving is the smaller part of that. It's all the other stuff, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Go on, Jeff.
So if anyone's thinking about fundraising, do you have any tips for someone who's thinking about doing their own, whether it's a physical challenge or whether it's something completely different? Do you have any tips about fundraising?
Well, I think in terms of actually raising funds, I think it's got to be, you know, make it really easy for yourself. I mean, we've got a Just Giving page, so all the money goes through Just Giving. So that means the admin side of it is really easy. You know, everybody gets thanked automatically and so on. Make it fun as well. So the things that we've done to fundraise are things that we enjoy. So back in March, we had a sort of like a fundraising event. We called it Curry in a Hurry. It had been done in our village before. And basically, we live in a tiny village. There is no pub. You have to drive anywhere to, you know, go to a shop or get a takeaway. So the curries were made. People pre-ordered the curries they wanted, and then they were delivered at a certain time to people's houses. And it was so successful. Really simple idea. Good fun to do. We had friends helping us do this as well. Couldn't have done it without them. And a team of our Deliveroo drivers, as we called them. So that was really good. And then I've been doing a blog online. So every week I sort of update people about our training, Ian's routes, just what's been happening really. And that keeps people involved. So that's really good. And then we have another fundraising event just before we leave. So we go on the 8th of September, and on the 6th of September, we have a pop-in pub because our local pub is closed, and that is that's used to raise money for particular charities. So the one in September, just before we go, will be for OMS. So all the proceeds from the bar and anything else that's going on that night will also be for fundraising. So those are things that we enjoy. You know, they're easy for us to do. So make it easy, make it fun, I think. And, you know, thank everybody and just keep updating people about how you're going.
Yeah. And so firstly, there'll be links in the show notes, so check them out because there'll be links to your Just Giving page and so on, and definitely encourage people. It's quite an undertaking, so yeah, it'd be good if you got some support. And with that, firstly, good luck, and it sounds amazing as well. I mean, I think you'll have an amazing time. I've seen quite a few bits of France, but you'll see the bits that you don't normally see, won't you? Which I think will be fantastic. So yeah, good luck, and thank you very much for joining us and telling us your story.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for having us. It's been really good to chat to you and tell you a bit more about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living Well with MS. Please check out this episode's show notes at overcomingms.org/podcast. You'll find useful links and bonus information there. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And please rate and review the show to help others find us. This show is made possible by the Overcoming MS community. Our theme music is by Claire and Nab Dean. Our host is Jeff Alex. Our videos are edited by Lorna Greenwood. And I'm the producer, Regina Beach. Have questions or ideas to share? Email us at podcast@overcomingms.org. We'd love to hear from you. The Living Well with MS podcast is for private, non-commercial use and exists to educate and inspire our community of listeners. We do not offer medical advice. For medical advice, please contact your doctor or other licensed healthcare professional.